Coming up tonight, inadequate conditions, concerns over the level of service. Could there be more going on than meets the eye? The dialysis unit has constantly been under scrutiny. Government says there's no money to improve the conditions, and patients aren't paying. But at what cost does the dilemma to this unit come? Tonight, our panel of journalists discuss some startling information. Beyond the Headline starts now. In the 21st century, Bahamians are still faced with rationalizing quality health care versus financial challenges. The dialysis unit comes under scrutiny once again. Good evening, everyone. I'm Clint Watson. Welcome to the show. Well, this isn't the first time we've talked to Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands on the issue of the dialysis unit. From what we've been told, it won't be definitely the last. As the minister says, getting patients to pay for the service is really the big issue here. Take a look. Sancheska Brown has that.
The gazetted fees suggest that those individuals should contribute an amount towards the provision of that service.
Currently they don't?
The majority either cannot or do not contribute to the provision of that service. And so it impacts the quality of care and the safety of care that can be provided in the healthcare system.
Dr. Sands says it has been historically difficult to require patients to pay what they are mandated by law to pay. But now things are going to change.
What we're asking people to do is to pay the dramatically subsidized, gazetted, and legally mandated fees. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. A different option would be if you use an indirect tax to make you pay and me pay up front, so that at the site, at the point of service, that nobody asks you for any money. That's what is done in the National Health Service in the United Kingdom, in the Canadian healthcare system, etc. But what ends up happening is that people wind up with an income tax bill of 50% of their take-home salary.
Opposition leader Philip Davis told reporters today he doesn't buy the whole "we don't have any money" excuse and insisted the government just needs to manage their money better.
So instead of paying that vendor $60 million one time, why don't you say, well, look, we know we owe you, but we have these other pressing issues. I'll give you $30 million cash now and take the other $30 million cash and put it in a PHA, for example. It's just a question of management, how you want to manage. And where their priorities are. Minister Sands should just become a full-time minister, get to work in his ministry, and quit the crybaby sour line chatter. It's embarrassing, and it is unbecoming of a minister.
So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about this. My contributors are here. My colleagues are here making me laugh. Journalist Sancheska Brown, Sinead Noel Ferguson, and Ketino Knowles. Welcome. Welcome, guys. Welcome.
Hi, Clint. Thanks for having us.
It's good to have you on the show. We're laughing over a joke in the studio, so you understand what's going on. Our floor director tripped over something. It was just hilarious. Wow. That's what we're talking about. All right, so we've seen this story about the dialysis unit, obviously a story that continues to evolve and continues to come up in the news. What's interesting, though, and I want to give this to our viewership, we're getting some information from the dialysis unit, and I think this is important to give to people so they understand why we're building this context of this story. We talked to several people who work for the dialysis unit, and we've talked to patients as well. Here's the information that we've gathered in talking to them. All right? The issue here, and it came out when the hospital administrator, Mary Walker, released a memo to internally expressing concern. Here's what the deal is. There are approximately about 190 patients on dialysis. Now, they're only able at that unit to accommodate 130 patients. That means that people get about 4 hours of care. That's what they should be getting on the machines, 4 hours for the 130 patients. However, because they have to accommodate 190 patients, that means people don't get all of the amount of hours that's required for their care. What they're saying is they're offering everybody a chance at life rather than offering the standard dose of therapy. Interesting there. We're offering everybody a chance at life rather than offering the standard dose of therapy. They are short-staffed, and instead of turning people away, they try to accommodate everybody with some dosage of the therapy they need for their conditions. Now, it also says that the only way to fix this is to increase the size of the dialysis unit. That means getting more chairs, which of course costs more money. We've heard the minister say here, the problem is finances. They don't have the money, and people need to begin paying, because if people pay for health care, they're able to provide more services and get the cost that they need. Let's begin our discussion on this. I thought the most powerful statement of this whole thing was the fact that we're offering everybody a chance at life rather than offering the standard dose of therapy. Interesting, true, but that should be concerning. The fact that we can't give people the quality they need to fight their disease, but we're trying to give everybody something because at the end of the day, finance is the issue.
I think that underscores really the challenges that the hospital as a whole is faced with, Clint. But when we look at this issue, when we look at the entire scheme of this issue, we have to remember what was the dialysis unit originally built to accommodate. Did we anticipate that so many more persons would have ended up with kidney failure, would have ended up having to use the services of the dialysis unit? If we have a unit that maybe was only able to accommodate 90 persons, and for the past 10 years, we've heard doctors, health ministers in and out talk about programs to prevent non-communicable diseases, to prevent chronic illnesses, to prevent these type of diseases, and then we look at the fact that our lifestyles have changed. Our diets have changed.
Good point.
We have done so much, and I'm not saying anyone's at fault here, because sometimes, it isn't about what you eat, what you do, you just end up sick. There's nothing that you can do that prevented you from having kidney failure or led to the circumstances of why you had to end up on the dialysis unit. But I think when we look at the issue, we have to look at it in totality. Because if the hospital never anticipated that, okay, in 2017, we would have seen a surge in persons having or experiencing renal failure. So when we would have had 19 patients, in a 6-month span, we dropped to 30, 35. And how do we, knowing our financial situation, knowing the state of the economy, how do we now fill in that gap?
Good point. I'll let you quickly sound before we go to break.
No, I was saying if we are going to talk about things in totality, we also have to talk about the fact that these things cost money, and we're not paying our bills. I guess that's something we could talk about when we come back from the break. As a public, as Bahamian people, it seems as though we love to get service for free, and upgrades to equipment and more space and more nurses and more doctors cost money. And according to the Public Hospitals Authority and the ministers, we just aren't paying for our services at the hospital. All
right, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this discussion, because it's the reality we're facing today. How do we deal with the challenge of what's going on in the dialysis unit? And is there a solution? And are Bahamians willing to pay for the service? We'll talk about that more with my panel of journalists right here from Eyewitness News when we come back right after the break. You're watching Beyond the Headlines. Welcome back. We are talking about the condition at the dialysis unit at the Princess Margaret Hospital. On my panel of contributors tonight are Eyewitness News journalists Janae Noel Ferguson, Francesca Brown, and of course, Kitty O'Donnell. It's so funny doing the show with my colleagues. I'm messing up. I can't remember their own names. We were talking before the break, and I think, Sandy, you brought up a very important point, the fact that it comes to a point in the Bahamas where, as Bahamians, we have to begin to talk about paying for things. We want services free, and then people feel as if I'm going to a public hospital, that means I don't pay anything. I think we have to change that mentality of thinking that you can get all of this expensive health care, these expensive procedures, get the best doctors to see you, and don't pay a dime but registration fee.
And that's what the minister is saying, and the PHA is saying, that, the majority of these dialysis patients do not pay when they go for this treatment. And so we end up paying for these people. And he said between, I think, $50,000 to $80,000 a year per person, something like $48 million that we're paying because they just refuse to pay. And he's saying that they can't pay. they just don't pay. So now what the hospital is looking to do is trying to find a way for people to pay before, they have this treatment or any sort of service at the hospital, which is not the way that you kind of want to go, because there are some people who genuinely cannot pay. But what do you do when...
So my concern, maybe you can tell me, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to be rational here, and I'm thinking public hospital meaning that you don't have to pay these exorbitant fees that you would pay to a private healthcare facility. You don't have to pay, but is it too much to expect not to have to pay for services? Isn't that what national health insurance is supposed to be about? You pay for national health insurance, then you get these services free. I mean, is that not how it should work?
See, I guess if we understand PMH from its inception, and we understand that it was supposed to be a state-run facility that gave free health care to Bahamian citizens. The fact is we've seen PMH having to take on a lot of individuals who may not necessarily be, permanent residents or Bahamian citizens, because we have seen that being an issue. And we've heard administrators talk about the fact that there is a lot of overcrowding in the facility. So when it may have been started, or at its inception, the idea was to allow for free healthcare for Bahamians, but we've seen how that has just changed. If you go into the facility, as you hear from administrators from time to time, there are a lot of individuals who are undocumented that find themselves in the facility.
And then again, Bahamians have become a lot more sickly.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that too.
That goes back to Janae's point.
So you've got a lot more people who are a lot sicker. Truth be told, because of our diet in a lot of cases, these chronic non-communicable diseases are in a lot of cases brought on by what it is that we're eating. So now you've got more people, you've got a sickly population on top of who are using the facility, on top of undocumented folks that end up there. And again, it's also become, in some cases, a stopgap for individuals who may be dealing with other issues that just end up there. Vagrants who may have, had a situation that caused them to end up in the hospital, and then they end up there taking up space, and of course their lives are valuable as well. So how do you decide and determine, I'll serve you and I won't serve you? Obviously, it's become a slippery slope for administrators having to balance all of these different scenarios and parameters, while at the same time not having the financing to actually keep this facility keep it in operation.
Candino, there's also the argument that, persons who are able to pay, who may be able to pay, I hear it all the time, well, if the undocumented persons aren't paying, then I'm not going to pay.
Right.
And then when you ask for responses to this, government had initiated this whole policy with all public services that, if you were not documented, then you would not be able to get in the schools, you would not be able to get health care, and then you go to a healthcare facility and you inquire about these policy decisions, and they say, as a doctor, we cannot deny anyone healthcare services. As educators, we can't deny anyone education. So where's the balance? What do you do?
You're right, because, and again, it goes right back to your question, Clint, which was, should people expect it? The fact is it was truly, through its inception, intended to provide healthcare services free of charge.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to come back with the Prime Minister. He weighed in on this whole issue. We're going to hear what he had to say, his words of wisdom right after the break. Stay close. Welcome back. We've been talking about the dialysis unit at Princess Margaret Hospital, the issue behind it, the fact that the real issue is that they don't have enough chairs to service the amount of people who are on dialysis. And we're talking about what has caused that, lifestyles. More and more people are becoming ill because of the lifestyles, or become whatever reason it is. It's causing there to be a burden on the system. And while they want to keep everybody alive by giving everybody a certain amount of hours each week, it's just too much for the system. They can't buy more chairs. They can't purchase more chairs because they don't have the funds. Prime Minister talked about health care at PMH just last night. Here's what he had to say.
PMH has always had challenges. It's nothing new. However, with the limited resources that they have, they still deliver the best quality health care you can find I had my surgical procedure done. I went to PMH because I have both confidence in the institution and the physicians. Many people don't. They run to the US. But I am convinced that we have some of the most skilled, qualified physicians, and we offer the best possible care under the circumstances that we have. We have limited resources, we have limited money, but in spite of that, you look at our record and you look at other records throughout the nation, throughout the world, we have an excellent healthcare record.
All right, so that's the Prime Minister's take on PMH.
I don't think the Prime Minister would have the same level of healthcare as you or
As
I.
I was about to say, I mean,
if we go to the hospital. But I think another thing that we're missing too at this whole conversation is a lot of people don't want to pay to go to the hospital because they feel the service wasn't good. I'm not going to pay to sleep on a cot in a hallway. I'm not going to pay if the elevator wasn't working and somebody had to carry me down 4 flights of stairs. I'm not going to pay if the air conditioner isn't working and I nearly sweat to death sitting in that room, or if I had to wait 15, 16 hours for someone to see me. So that's another reason that people aren't paying either, because they're like, the nurse was rude to me. I was here from Thursday. It is now Monday morning and I'm still sitting here and no one has served me yet. So that's another reason why people are refusing to pay too.
But this goes to the argument that administrators have put forward, which is we don't have any money in the first place. So the fact is if you haven't actually been paying those bills, I can't fix the air conditioning for you. I'd love to. I can't fix these problems with mold in the maternity ward because we're not getting the money. People aren't paying for the services that they're getting.
You pay for what you get. I mean, if you've ever been to the maternity ward in a private section, or if you've been to the private ward, in the PMH, it's a complete different experience.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. The people there, the professionals there are great. They check on you. They look after you. It's a wonderful environment. It's really, you won't believe you're in typical PMH, but that's because you're paying for something. And I think if Bahamians understood that it's better to pay for something and have a good experience and live than to get it free and possibly die.
Everybody can't afford it though.
Exactly.
True.
If I can
Well,
afford
that's
it,
why,
I will.
again, we need to reprioritize, right? And what I mean by that is, I know everybody may not have jobs to have insurance, but it may make sense buying that insurance policy and spending $50 a month rather than going to Miami.
But if I don't have the $50 a month, everybody don't go to
Then
Miami.
fine. Then everybody ain't broke. Everybody ain't poor. We can find money to do whatever we want. We can find $50 if you have to go to the hairdresser.
Of course.
So if
that's
you were
a
to pay your
priority.
insurance, you'd find $50 a month is a priority. You spend your money where it's important because you know that you may need the service.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I think while everybody don't have it, if most of us who can get access to it will put our monies in the right place, we will have a better flow.
But even there's a catch to that, to getting insurance. We've heard a lot of people complain about local insurance agencies not honoring claims, and there being issues that are pre-existing with certain
They can't get
individuals.
insured now with all these conditions. You can't get insured.
So at this point, it doesn't even matter if I get insured. If I'm already suffering from a particular pre-existing condition, which is what they call them, right? You
On
have that condition.
dialysis, who is going
at
to
this
insure
rate,
you at this
you're-
point?
You getting insurance,
NHI.
and getting a policy
that
that
was
will
the
pay.
importance of NHI.
We can't get it.
NHI was
We can't
about
afford
to.
it.
But
NHI.
in all of
Nobody's
this,
saying we can't afford it.
in all of this, what I think is interesting, like the PM said, we've always had challenges at PMH, but I think for the first time, we've had information about what's happening at PMH.
Right. We didn't know all this before.
Never before have we heard that the elevator was down and we have to lift people down flights of stairs and we can't find bodies in the morgue because of overcrowding. And I think that's where governments have failed to give us the information. Let us know. So as a taxpayer, I have a better understanding of where my money is going and what are the priorities. Because right now it seems like the priority is healthcare. I'm hearing about all of the things that are, falling down.
I'm gonna be the elephant in the room. Well, I could think of what you could do is healthcare with $65 million.
Well, I mean, it's what the opposition said. PLP leader Philip Ray Davis said the same thing. I mean, if you guys can find $65 million to pay for a hotel and the additional expenses that are going to come with it's going to be $100-something million. We couldn't take $30 million of that and give it to the PHA so they could pay the doctors and the nurses and the consultants who are about to strike, or at least scrape the mold off the ceiling in the maternity ward or something with that $30 million.
In other words, put it into people so they could live.
To use your word, prioritize.
Yeah.
Taxpayers are looking at that and saying, you know what?
And at the
Okay,
end of
we're
the day,
spending
we
this
have to
money
know.
here.
Yeah.
Do we
I
have to
can't
do this
know.
here?
Exactly.
Do we need to put that
But
investment there?
it goes back
right?
to what I've said before and repeatedly. You come with us with a budget. You said we have to raise taxes because of our serious tightness on our economy. And then when we see you spend money and we see you make decisions and we see you go and buy a hotel, it makes me wonder if you have all this breathing room, did you really need to raise the tax?
Yeah, absolutely. And in my mind, when I look at, Clint, can you read that line from the dialysis unit
Yes.
that talks about 4 hours of care on the machine and them having to adjust to save lives? Can you
It
read
says,
that?
it says the problem in the unit is we can only accommodate a certain amount of people. Each person should get 4 hours. We average 190 patients a week. We should only be able to accommodate 130 patients. So we are offering everybody a chance at life rather than offering the standard dose of therapy.
That was the line that I
They're
really
only
wanted,
running about 2 hours now.
offering patients a chance at life. I think that statement is indicative of the situation at PMH. We've seen that with bed shortages earlier this year, which
Yeah.
we've reported on.
Yeah.
We've seen that with a CT scan machine that is intermittently inoperable.
Yeah.
Malfunctioning air conditioner and elevator, as you said, mold in the maternity ward, and other issues that have probably not even come to light and perhaps may never actually make it
Yeah.
in the public sphere.
So where is the public
So-
outcry? The only one
so-
I see
so
seemingly
that-
out making a cry for these issues is the health minister.
And-
no one
and-
else is
and
saying,
you
I went to the hospital and this happened to me, or I'm on
yeah.
dialysis and I'm only been given 2 hours when I'm accustomed to 4
Nobody's
hours.
gonna
How
say
is
that
that
because
affecting
they don't
my
wanna go
life?
back
No
and-
one
and
is saying
upset anybody.
anything.
That's absolutely
Again,
the point
but
that I'm
remember
making.
now,
That's absolutely
they're
the
not
point
saying
that I'm
anything
making,
because there are
here's what.
consequences. When the
Why
administrator,
should there be consequences?
when the administrator Mary Walker, when Mary Walker spoke out and spoke up about the conditions and the seriousness of it, what happened to her? She was suspended.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Now, whatever reason they give for it, the reality is she was vocal about it because she recognized that, listen, this is what we are
Lives
dealing
are at
with.
stake.
Lives are at stake.
And that's why I outlined all of those issues, and I went right back to what we were dealing with at the beginning of the year, the bed shortage, and you covered that, Sani. So you recall the issues that we saw down there, and the fact is as you said, where's the public outcry? That was the point I was
Where is it?
actually getting to, because
Where is
the fact is this: if you're saying to me that it comes down to determining, who lives and who dies, because that's what it's coming down
And we've
to.
heard this
We
before.
had
The
this
former
before.
Prime
The
Minister
former-
said it.
The
He
former
said it.
health
He
minister,
said it.
Perry Gomez,
Exactly.
when we talked about catastrophic care and who gets what, who is
Yeah.
given,
Exactly.
who
I mean,
determines
come on.
whether
To
someone
me,
lives
why
or
21st
dies.
century we still making the same decisions?
So to
Should
me-
you live or die?
To me, that then is where our focus really should be.
Yeah.
If we're prioritizing people's lives
Yeah.
versus.
But to me, this is a
versus
no-brainer
money.
because we have all of these international agencies, the World Bank, we have the Pan American Health Organization, all of these people who offer assistance, grants, and all of these things. Why haven't we reached out to somebody and said, listen, our dialysis unit in the Bahamas is critical right at this point. We have too many people on dialysis and we can't provide them the quality health care they need. We need to get at least 2 more seats in here right away and reach out to some agency to be able to donate. Go to Life for Key, for heaven's sakes. Go to all these rich people in this country and say, listen, we need 2 dialysis chairs. Why are we just sitting back saying, oh, ain't no money, let's just accept it to be that so, and not reaching out to people to get help? It makes you wonder whether
They're
governments and
taking it
systems
seriously.
really care about
Yeah.
Well, the
helping
government
people.
just
Do they
talked
take it
about
seriously?
public-private partnerships. Is this something that they're looking
Listen,
at to
please,
forge
no, they're not,
relationships with
because
the
we've seen the
private
policy.
sector to-
That policy
to
is
shore up
foolishness.
the-
That policy, that private-public partnership policy is foolishness. That was something that was in place working before. It had
Yeah.
no problem, and all of a sudden it came up with this long document on PP3Ps that has no relevance to people in the country who have companies that want to help the government to provide adequate things for the payment people.
I think
That's foolishness.
The hospital will get fixed and we'll find the money as soon as the politicians have to visit the public ward and have to go on.
And they won't have to do it.
They don't do
'Cause They're gonna
it.
go right
When
away.
they have surgeries,
can go
they
to
go
Jackson
way to have
Memorial
surgeries,
Hospital.
exactly.
They can go to Cleveland Clinic. They can take their money and their wonderful
And that's the problem.
insurances that the
Until they
government
have
paying
to do
for,
it,
and they're
until
gonna
they
go and
to
have
do it,
fun.
They're never going to fix it.
See, and I think it's important for us to always also remember the people who are impacted by this the most. We talked about the money and talked about people having the money and actually going and prioritizing, right?
Yeah.
But what about, And I hate to do this, but just to kind of break down, for instance, what our average household income looks like,
Yeah.
right? When you're looking at households that are taking home $23,000 annually, right?
Who's taking that home?
So, but my
Probably
point
taking
is,
home 12
my point is in the average household, you look at that number, and then you realize folks that may have obligations like living expenses. I
Like-
mean, again,
Rent or mortgage, yeah.
rent,
Light
mortgage,
comes first.
car,
Light,
car
which is
payments,
important.
Bill comes first.
other payments, and I'm not talking
you
about
see a
folks.
September bill?
I'm not talking
Oh.
about folks who may have found themselves in consumer debt. I'm talking about folks who genuinely
Yeah.
are trying to make it on that kind of salary.
Yeah.
I say that to say, at the end of the day, if it comes down to determining whether I spend my money on a facility that's supposed to be a public healthcare facility versus
pay my
actually
bill.
taking my money to
I
pay
won't.
my bills,
I
what
won't.
am I going to do?
I won't.
So at the end of the day, it's something that we have to consider also, that folks are genuinely, in a lot of cases, unable
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
actually
But
pay
this
for the
is
pay
why
for the
governments are elected to make life better.
Easier.
And then while you may not be able to buy a new chair, what you can do to me to make sure I don't go to the dialysis unit, you can make sure I can afford to eat healthy. I can't eat fruits and vegetables when they're so expensive in the food store.
Absolutely.
Can of corned beef and spaghetti, Franco-American, is cheaper. I will buy the spaghetti. It'll have all that cholesterol, it'll have all that fat, it'll have
noodles are
all that
99
in there.
cents and they
We will,
full
of
come
ramen
on,
noodles all
ramen
day.
noodles is full of sodium. But I will
But it
buy
costs
that
$1.
because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to buy the dialysis chair for me as a people, then take the tax and the VAT off fruits and vegetables, and I can live longer. I won't need to go to the dialysis unit. That's
My
what
thing
I
is,
suggest.
it's been in discussion, but everything takes so long. We talk.
We talk.
Why
talk.
should it
The
not
thing
be
that
a
More
happened
show
talk.
fast in this
then?
country was buying a grand of
Well,
land.
that-
Oh, yeah, that happened
happened
quick.
really
That happened
fast.
before we even saw the
Yeah,
document in
that
Parliament.
happened really fast.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Listen, thank you so much for joining me, Janaea, Kendia.
Listen, can't get it right.
Janaea,
Get it right.
Francesca, and Candido. Oh, it's been a long day. Thanks so much
It
for
has
joining us
been.
tonight, and we look forward to seeing you right back. Tomorrow, we have a very important guest tomorrow. Tomorrow night on this show will be Omar Archer. We're going to talk to him about this whole controversy with the contract. We're going to talk to him about people saying, listen, you were the big activist, and now you turn the registrar? How did that happen overnight? What qualified you to do that? But he's going to be here to explain all of that. We're going to talk to him tomorrow night. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks.